Welcome to Cambridge House Live. I'm Vanessa Collette here at the 11th Annual Silver Summit in Spokane, Washington. I'm joined by Jeff Berwick, founder of the Dollar Vigilante and CEO of TDV Media. Welcome, Jeff. Great to have you back again.
Thank you, Vanessa. It's always great.
Jeff, you've expressed your dislike of the state many times. What was your take on the U.S. government shutdown that we just witnessed?
Well, I wish they really shut down. They didn't, obviously. They shut down, they put up some cones around some parks, they put up some closed gates on some national parks. The CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the DEA, and like thousands of other alphabet soup agencies all stayed open. They actually shut down Silk Road, I don't know if you know what that is, during that time. So it was obviously a fake shutdown. But the funny part to me was how some people were worried about it. Like, did anyone notice any change in their life? The federal government does nothing except for destroy lives and cause problems for people.
It's your take.
It's definitely my take.
Jeff, what does all that tell you about the state of the U.S. economy in general?
Well, yeah, that's a big part of it is the debt ceiling, which I call the debt target because they always hit it. That was a big issue that they had, that they were supposedly talking about. It's all BS. I don't know if we can swear on your program, but it's BS. The U.S. government, the federal government, is bankrupt. It's insolvent, and it's only going to get worse from here. They're going into $1 trillion worth of debt per year right now. Just to give some sort of perspective, in 1980, the total debt of the U.S. government was $900 billion, so less than $1 trillion. And now every single year they go up more than $1 trillion. If you look at the total debt, it's now $17 trillion. If the interest rates were allowed to go to their natural market level, that would mean $1.7 trillion per year in interest payments alone. And the total tax extortion theft-based revenue of the U.S. government is about $2 trillion. So all of their theft would actually go towards interest rate payments alone if interest rates rose. And that's why Ben Bernanke and now the incoming Janet Yellen, which is going to be even worse, just like in Rome, it's always worse and worse and worse, will always keep it at 0%.
What do you mean by just like in Rome, always gets worse?
Well, yeah, that's what happened in Rome, is every Caesar after Caesar after Caesar, everyone thought that's going to be the worst one. And then this other guy comes in, Caligula comes in, and it's just worse and worse. And this is the exact same in the U.S. Everyone thought George W. Bush was terrible. Now we have Barack Hussein Obama. And now they're talking about for 2016, if there even is an election, because this whole country is falling apart. If there is, they're talking about Michelle Obama and Hillary Clinton as the Democrat ticket for 2016.
Interesting. I haven't heard that one yet.
You're lucky.
Well, you've said that it was going to get hard to buy gold or silver with paper currency in the coming years. Do you see any trend towards that?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at Cyprus, when Cyprus happened, all the banks in Cyprus closed and they actually stole 50% of the Cyprus depositors' money. There was actually a period of time when actually our research staff called almost everywhere in the world and said, can we buy gold or silver right now? And everyone said no. And that was just Cyprus. Cyprus is a small place. That's a tiny little island with a tiny amount of money in the grand scheme of things. When this starts to really fall apart, which I think will happen in the next couple of years, if you don't own gold and silver right now, you will not be able to buy it for fiat currency in the next few years.
And why is that?
Because people won't accept it, because it'll start to hyperinflate. Europe is going to go into a major crisis. What happened in Cyprus is going to happen in Italy, it's going to happen in France, it's going to happen in Spain, 100%. It's going to happen in the US, it's going to happen in Canada, it's going to happen in Australia. All of these countries actually put in bail-in clauses, which is what Cyprus did, the actual legislation. So as these all start to collapse, and this will happen in the next couple of years, people won't accept any amount of money for precious metals.
You've also said that it's become hard to buy physical gold at all. Are you seeing any of that?
Well, what I was saying was during that period of time, it was very difficult. Now you still can, but it's not that easy, really. The paper and the physical price are really it's almost like two different worlds. And it's going to get worse and worse. We're sort of in still the eye of the hurricane right now. People still believe that everything's okay. They still believe in green shoots. They still believe in recovery. It's not going to happen. But it is definitely getting harder and harder to buy physical, to actually buy these ETFs, to invest in futures. All those things you can still do, but that's not real precious metals. You don't actually own any precious metal. But as we go further along, and I'm talking in the next 1 or 2 years, maybe a little longer, it'll be very hard to buy physical. And actually, even if you own physical, it will be very difficult to keep it because the governments who purport to own you, which are most Western governments, and actually almost every government on earth, will start to confiscate it. It's not a crazy idea. This has happened in 1933 in the US.
Now moving over to Bitcoin. Bitcoin's continued to gain popularity and momentum. What do you think, of the popularity it's been gaining, and are you still involved in any way?
I'm definitely involved in terms of I love it. It started in 2009. I heard about it in 2011, and it was about $3 at that point. And I started doing some Bitcoin businesses last year or this year, sorry, I don't remember exactly. But it was around $35 actually when Cyprus happened, and it went to $250. And then it had a major drawback, and it went down to about $50 per Bitcoin. It's currently, as we speak, about 210, I believe. If Bitcoin continues to have an uptake with the population, it continues to be used as a currency, it could go to, and I don't mean to talk about crazy numbers here, but we're talking millions of dollars of Bitcoin.
Wow.
It's
quite an increase.
Yeah, it's just supply and demand. And people are starting to realize these paper currencies with just pictures of criminals painted onto them. And like on the other side, there's this pyramid with an all-seeing eye. Like people are starting to realize they've been fooled. We've been fooled since 1913 with the Federal Reserve. And we really got fooled, or not, I don't mean we, but the people in general in 1971. And more people, especially younger people, who are not seeing any of the good sides of government or central banking. They're seeing all the negative sides. They're born into $250,000 worth of debt in the US. Everything, you want to go to school, which is pointless. It's mostly useless. Costs you $100,000. The younger people are starting to realize, and there's starting to be an awakening, that all this stuff is BS. And a lot of people are gravitating towards Bitcoin, especially in places like Argentina, where they have capital controls, like real capital controls right now. Iran. We're going to see it in the U.S. We're seeing in the U.S. Even in Germany right now, Berlin, there's so many places that accept Bitcoin as currency. And the central banks are very scared of this, but they can't stop it.
So are you seeing banks cracking down on Bitcoin more and more?
It's really interesting because all over the world, every single government, every single central bank is doing different things. In Thailand, they're trying to crack down. In the US, they're definitely cracking down. They've actually subpoenaed a few months ago anyone to do with Bitcoin to go to New York to talk in front of Congress, which thankfully I did not get subpoenaed. I wouldn't go if they did, but thankfully I didn't. Canada flip-flopped. At first, they closed many bank accounts of anyone to do with Bitcoin. And now they're kind of saying, okay, Bitcoin's okay. Europe, every country's different. France is kind of open to it. These governments, they're all crazy. So they change their minds all the time. But who cares? Because they can't actually stop Bitcoin.
How do you see Bitcoin versus gold and silver?
That's an interesting question. You always ask interesting questions. I think they're both important. The biggest problem with gold and silver is it's physical. So there was a person who was traveling from Italy to, I believe, Switzerland recently, and he had over $1 million worth of gold in his car, and he got stopped by the mafia, the gangs, the cops, the government, and they stole all his gold. And they said, wait, where'd you get it? And so because of that, it's dangerous because we have a world full of very dangerous gangs right now. The only difference between government and mafia is size. And so we have a world full of mafias, giant mafias. The one thing great about Bitcoin is they can't stop it. they can't even find out where it is. So they took over Silk Road recently. They found the person who was running Silk Road. And
I'm not sure I'm familiar with
okay.
Silk Road.
Silk Road was like the eBay of black market. And black market just means free market. But they found him, the FBI, during the shutdown, and they found that he had $80 million worth of Bitcoins. But they didn't know his password for the Bitcoin, so they can't get to it. So this is very interesting. You can protect some of your wealth by putting it into Bitcoin. It's speculative, it's new, it's different, but the actual designer of Bitcoin designed it almost exactly the way gold was. So to create a Bitcoin, you actually have to mine it, but you mine it with computers. It's very interesting. It's incredibly interesting. For people who are interested in gold and silver, they should really look into Bitcoin as a second option.
And what's the downside risk with Bitcoin?
Well, just like with anything, like you could say with gold, the downside is the government will take it all, right? With Bitcoin, the downside is they turn off the internet, because without the internet, you can't have Bitcoin.
Okay.
The other downside is the government could come after it so hard that they would make people stop using it, because the less people use it, the less the value is going to be. And that's why the value is rising, because it's being used more and more. There's risk everywhere. I call this period of time right now the most dangerous time in human history for capital. It's very dangerous. You have to be very safe.
Well, just as we wrap up, Jeff, I think one of the last questions I really wanted to get to with you is, with the U.S. shutdown, and that was a major economic threat, but it didn't really seem to affect gold and silver the way that a lot of people expected. Why do you think that is?
Well, I actually wrote about that, and I think you're wrong. Sorry. But I actually think the less government there is, so the government shut down, I believe, about 20%. So you actually saw the stock market rise, and you saw gold fall a little bit. And many gold bugs were very confused about that.
Right.
No, the less government there is, the better it is for the economy. And the better the economy is, the worse it is for gold. Gold is sort of a counterweight to the economy and prosperity and the monetary system. So if the government shut down 100%, that would be very bad for gold.
So you weren't surprised at all by
No, I was not surprised at all.
Well, Jeff, it's fascinating as ever to chat with you. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, it's always my pleasure.